What is up, guys? Welcome to the channel. My name is Travis. This is TWA Motorsports, and today we are going to be working on the Sierra pickup. Now, a couple videos ago, I posted a video where we did Seafoam in the tank because I had been having some issues with it driving down the road. It was cutting out, was having some issues starting. Chances are it's probably a fuel pump, but that seems to have done a little better now. So I think the Seafoam probably helped. But now that the Seafoam is completely ran through the tank, I poured some in the oil, I poured some in the intake, I poured a whole container into the fuel system. So it is all ran through. Now we're going to be doing a tune-up. That's right, a tune-up on the Turd 4.3. I think it can get a little better mileage, so we are going to see. Right now we average about 16. I will let you guys know down the road if it did improve it, but today we're going to be replacing several things. So air filter, we're going to be replacing the spark plug wires, the spark plugs, the fuel filter, the cap and rotor. Obviously we're going to be changing the oil because we put that Seafoam in the oil, and that is going to be some nasty oil. So let's get started. I'm going to probably start by getting the oil drained out, and then we will go to the fuel filter, just because I can be letting the oil drain completely out while I'm doing these other things. Once we get the oil filter or the fuel filter off and the new one put into place, then we'll come up here and start addressing like the spark plugs and whatnot. But other than that, guys, I haven't done a whole lot to the truck since the last video. I have taken the tailgate off. If you notice, the tailgate is gone. I took it to my painter. That was one of the things he wanted to start on. I'm going to be filling the holes that are underneath that black piece of plastic that runs across the top. Also going to be shaving the tailgate handle, relocating it to the inside. So as you can see, I've got a lot of scratches. He's going to be addressing this down the road, but he wanted to get a start on the tailgate, so that is where it is at. But let's crawl under the truck, get some tools, and get that oil drained out. You know, one of the upsides to not lowering this truck yet is I can still get underneath it to get the oil out. So there's the plug right there. We're going to get it out of the way. Should be a 15 millimeter, and then the filter is right above it, which is nice and handy. Everything can drain down in one area. Okay, it's a 13, not a 15. That sucks. I had to crawl out from under the truck. Oh well. Now that we got the oil draining, I'm going to go ahead and unhook the negative side of the battery, because we're going to be working with some electronic stuff up here, and well, better safe than sorry. So now let's crawl under the truck, find the fuel filter, and put it into place. Now if you get under the truck, the fuel filter is actually right underneath the driver's side floorboard. Maybe a little further back, maybe under the seat, but this is it right here. 20 millimeter is the stationary one. And the other one I believe is a 17, but we're going to get it out of the way. I wish that it was a clip on the front side and a, you know, the push-on style, but it's not. You actually have to take both sides. Be very careful while you're doing this, making sure not to get gas in your eyes. That is well, it sucks. Don't do it. Anyway, let's get this out of the way, push the old one out. There is a flow, the actual instructions, well, not really instructions, but it's printed on the side which way flows which way. Just try to replace it the exact same way that the other one came out. Now, other than the fact that you get gas on you, and everywhere else for that matter, not too hard of a project really. You just need to make sure that you're holding that stationary nut while the other one is being tightened down. And this actually has had a filter put in it before, which is kind of surprising. I thought it was the factory one, but anyway, now we've got the new one in. And let's go up under the hood and see what we can get in next. Now we're going to be taking the airbox off first, and there's just this like wing nut, plastic style wing nut right here, and then we're going to take it all off. So I'm going to use a flathead screwdriver on this side, and then there are a couple connections that you need to pull off right there. I think that maybe that's the only one actually. Once we do that, we can take this, like I said, this flathead out, get this completely out of the way. It kind of folds forward and pulls out of place. Once we get that intake tube out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and take these Phillips screwdriver or screws out. Using a Phillips screwdriver, I guess. Anyway, we're going to get this air filter out of the way. My guess is it is disgusting because I don't know. I mean, I guess it did have a new fuel filter on it, so maybe it's not too bad. But nonetheless, we're going to replace it. Just 4 in each corner. It actually looks really, really good. May have been a waste. That actually looks good, but I'm replacing it. Got this heavy duty filter. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Well, look, before I do that, let's get the vacuum, because look at the inside. Looks like it's had a mouse in here, which is nice. We're going to vacuum all of that out real quick. Well, now we've got all of the stuff vacuumed out of that. We can put the filter back into place and put this airbox back. Well, now that we have the filter in place, we're going to go ahead and hit the spark plugs. So we're going to pull the spark plug boots off of each one of these plugs, and we're going to be replacing them with some new AC Delco plugs. Now, I'll be listing everything in the descriptions down below like always, guys, but this is kind of preference. I like to use AC Delco wires, plugs, everything I can use it's AC Delco. Aside from like the filters, I like to use wicks on my filters. So that's the reason I'm using wicks. And like I said, I'll list all this stuff down below, but let's grab these boots, take them out of the way, and get the spark plugs out. The other thing is, if you do not know your spark plug gap, it is actually printed right here. 60 thousandths is what it's supposed to be set at. These are supposed to be pre-gapped, but I'm going to check them anyway and make sure that they're at 60 thousandths before I put them in. Well, I don't know if you guys noticed, but they are actually the original spark plugs, which, you know, that's 150,000 miles on the original spark plugs. I'd say we got the use out of them. These are really close. They were at 55 thousandths. I went ahead and gapped them to 60. Now let's get this one in. Well, one down and what, 5 to go. Good thing is it's only a 6-cylinder, and I did start on the easy side. The other side, because the steering shaft's there, shouldn't be too big of an issue, but it's a little harder. You don't have as much access. Well, now that we got one side complete, let's move on to this other side. And like I said, the steering shaft's kind of in the way for one of them, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. Just won't be able to use the extension on this side. Let's go ahead and grab these. Now, because this middle one's so close to the steering shaft, I'm using a really small, it's like a 1-inch extension. Comes in really handy not only on trucks like this, but on all the Trans Ams that I've worked on. You really need this extension. check out what happened on the back one. Obviously the plug, I mean, I was pulling on the wire probably a little too much, but chances are I don't think the plug wires have been replaced either. So that back spark plug was like super loose, but we're all good. Got all the new spark plugs in. Now we're gonna move on to the wires. So the easiest way, I think, guys, to do the wires is you could take them all off at one time. All right, and then you can try to figure out which one goes where. That sucks. I'm not doing that. So I'm gonna start with the coil. The coil wire is the shortest. I'm going to replace all of these on this side. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this one off. I'm gonna match it up with one that comes in the package, and which the coil one's pretty obvious which one it is. But I'm not gonna plug it in. I am going to route it to where it needs to be, and I'm going to leave them lined up where they need to plug in. And the reason I'm going to do that is obviously I'm going to be changing the cap and rotor as well. So, like I said, we're going to start with the coil. We're going to take it off, and golly. Anyway, we're going to move on from the coil down the passenger side, and then we'll go over to the driver's side. Now, there are a couple clips. I do think it probably has had plug wires in the past because several of these clips are broken. Not on this side, but on the driver's side, it seems like most of them are broken. The other thing you might take note of is these are 90-degree angles. Every other one other than these two are straight on boots. So, at least I think, pretty sure that they are. Yep, they are all straight on other than those couple on the passenger side. So, like I said, let's get started on that one. Take them all off, get them routed into place after we match them up with the new ones. And we should be good to start on the cap back there. So this side is completely finished, and I have all these snapped back into place, and the plugs actually, or the plug wire is actually plugged on the end of the plugs. Now we can go to the passenger side, and we have one less, obviously, because of the coil, but we also have a lot more to fight around as far as, like, you know, all these wires and cords and whatnot. So make sure that you guys are trying to keep track of which wire goes where. Now, on that side, it's actually labeled 246, so I'm pretty sure it's labeled on this side 135, but just make sure that you know which actual plug goes to which spot, because obviously it's not going to start, or it's going to run crappy if you take that rotor off, you don't get things back in, or the cap off, and you don't get things back in the right place. So let's go ahead and undo these clips. Most of them are broken on this side, so I don't have a lot to undo, but we're going to get the two that look like they are good cut or moved out of the way, and then get these plug wires replaced. Now that we got the plug wires all routed, plugged into the plugs, we're ready to go and tackle the actual cap. I'm going to be replacing the cap and the rotor. Now, you're going to have to kind of do this blind, and so what I'm saying by doing it blind is you can use this as a guide. Obviously, this is the coil, so there's 4 on the passenger side. This is how it's sitting in the truck. But I've got this neat little tool that it's a, what is it, a T20. And it sets onto a 1/4 inch wrench, so I'm going to be able to get to it, but like I said, you're going to be having to do this while it without being able to see it, unless you want to crawl back in there, which I'm not going to. You got to take 2 of these out. This comes off. Once this is off, then we'll be able to get to the actual rotor itself and get it out of place. It's kind of the same situation. It's a T20, I believe, also. So let's get this one off, and then we'll talk about the rotor. So you can see now we have the cap off, the rotor is exposed, and the same thing in the center of it. You're going to take those 2 T20s out, and we're just going to be replacing it in the exact same place. So see how the blue is pointing back? That is exactly the way the new one needs to go on. It can only go on 2 ways, but you want to make sure that it's firing in the same way that it came off. And actually, guys, I lied to you. It is a T15. I thought it was the same. It's actually just a hair smaller. So we're going to use a T15 to take these two out. So a couple things you can look at is the corrosion on this, and it's, you know, it's not new, but it's not terrible. It does have some corrosion, but this, does have a little bit on it as well. So good thing we're replacing it. You know, this does come with the new rotor. Comes with 2 sets of bolts, and that's why I thought it was a T20. It actually is the smaller ones, and I think the reason they include these are these are the size to actually bolt this down, but this came with that as well. So let's get this back into place. Remember, we're pointing it in the same direction that it was at before, and just tighten these down. They do have a little bit of Loctite on them. Don't go real crazy on this, just nice and snug, and then we will get this back into place and plug everything back up. Once you get these in, or this thing into place, you got to be careful not to drop the actual nuts, because they don't, or the bolts, that they don't stay in there. You can go ahead and snug it down. Now, you're not going to get real crazy tightening this because it is plastic and it will crack. So be careful. Just nice and snug. I'm sure there's a torque spec on it. I don't have it. I've never really torqued something like this. I've always just got it tight and went with that. So you know, not too tight that you're going to break it. Once we get this tightened down, this back one's giving me fits. There we go. Once we get it tightened down, then we're good to go ahead and hook up our plug wires and our coil wire, and then we'll get ready to pour some oil on this thing. Now, one more thing, guys, before you hook this up, it's pretty simple. You can see 3, 1, 5. This is cylinder 1, middle one's 3, back one's 5, 2, 4, 6 on the other side. The other side lines up, so it literally goes 2, 4, and 6 on plugging it in. This side, the 2 front ones, or the front one and the middle one, are swapped. So just make sure that you're hooking the plug wires up the right way. I'm gonna go ahead and stick those in place, and then, like I said, we're gonna probably put that intake tube back into place. Then we'll pour some oil in it, fire it up, and see what happens. Well, guys, I know what you're going to say. Normally I would clean this off. I'm pretty good about cleaning stuff as I take it apart, but I'm kind of in a time crunch, and to be honest with you, I'm going to clean completely under this hood at some point, and I will make a video on that cleaning when I do that. So I don't want to spoil it by cleaning this one part, but now we are ready to put the plug back in. We're going to put the oil filter back on, and then we're going to pour some oil in it. But make sure, guys, that you hook this back up on the back side. Make sure all your plugs and plug wires are where they need to be. Generally, you don't have to unplug anything other than the plug wires themselves. So as far as any electronics, some people like to unplug that. You can change the filter without unplugging the mass airflow sensor. But let's slide under the car. Let's get the oil plug back in, get the new oil filter on, and get some oil in this thing and fire it up. One thing you guys always want to make sure of is that your gasket on your plug is good, and mine was. It looks actually fairly new. The other thing you want to make sure of is if your old O-ring came off where your filter was at, and mine did. I always like to wipe it off because it's always nasty. And then before I put the new one on, I always like to put a little bit of oil on it just to soften up that seal. And so that's something I'll do. I'll put a little bit of this old oil out of this container on it. Well, obviously the last thing we need to do, other than start it, is pour some oil in it. Everything's tightened up down below. Let's go ahead and this truck calls for 4.5 quarts. So that's what we're going to put in it. Might go to 4 and then start it actually. And then we'll check it once it's ran for a minute and filled up that filter. Normally I like to fill my filters up before I put them on, but because I was on limited space down there. I really need like 2 lifts, one to like keep a project on that I've been working on forever, like the Trans Am, and one to work on actual stuff with. All right, it's got 4 quarts in it. So let's start it up and see if it'll start. It'll take a minute to start because obviously we took that filter off, the fuel filter, and that'll cause some, I wouldn't really say problems, but it will not have any fuel up to the front of the motor. So it might crank for a minute, but should start up and hopefully run well. You know what I forgot to do? Hook up the battery. Let's get that real quick. Let's try this again with the battery hooked up. There we go. Pretty normal. Oil pressure's good. Seems to be running well. This is exciting. No misses. Seems to be idling smooth. All right, guys. I'm gonna shut it off. We're gonna go check the oil, make sure that it's right where it needs to be. Fill it up. If it's not, hopefully it will be, but you don't wanna ever overfill. But then I think we'll be finished up. Well guys, the truck did take another half quart of oil, which is no big deal, but we are finished up. Everything is running like it should. No smoking, no issues, no leaks. I checked for the fuel pump, or I mean the fuel filter that we changed, no leaks there. Everything seems to be in order. So we replaced the fuel filter, air filter, cap, rotor, plug wires, plugs, basically everything in a normal tune-up. And it is starting to actually mist and rain, and look how dirty my arms are on my shirt. This is what it looks like when you actually work on a car. So I've got a big mess to clean up, so I'm gonna get to that. But guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. This is something that probably is a waste of time, obviously, if I go to a V8 down the road, but I am driving this truck a ton, like 70 miles a day, and so because I'm doing that, I didn't want it to lay down on me. I wanted to get it a good tune-up and maybe see if I could squeeze another couple miles per gallon out of it. But you know, like I said, if we put a V8 in it, it's kind of a waste. Anyway, if you do like this video, guys, please smash that thumbs up button. If you're not subscribed, go down, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you ring the bell icon. That way you're notified every time we drop a new video. And well, we have a ton of stuff planned for this truck. This is just the tip of the iceberg. As I talked about, it is going to paint soon. We're going to be doing some recon on the outside as far as lights, bumpers, just about everything. I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to spoil it. You're just going to have to tune in to see what happens on either this truck or any of the other projects.